Hey, I'm Markia.
Want to hear something scary?
Hidden Demons. Haru was in town for a conference and staying with his sister Asami. They rarely saw each other and didn't usually get along, but she always tried to make him feel welcome. Tonight they were going out to dinner and she was surprised they were able to get a table right away, since it was typically a 30-minute wait. When the waiter arrived, Haru noticed the skin on the man's face had a rough texture, just like stucco. She felt bad for the guy, thinking he must have been through a terrible accident. But Haru, always the bully, mocked the waiter as soon as he left the table. Asami cringed and looked around the restaurant. It was strange that it was just them and another couple. Haru then turned his attention to the couple and couldn't stop laughing at how they were dressed. The man's outfit perfectly matched the leather booth they were seated at, while the woman's dress had a literal brick wall pattern. The woman got up from her seat and walked in their direction. Asami shot her brother a disapproving look. The woman stopped in front of their table and looked over Haru for a moment. She then quickly turned her attention to Asami and smiled.
"You're a lucky one,"
the woman said in a creepy voice. Asami blushed and looked away, embarrassed. When she turned back to apologize for Haru, the woman was gone. Asami glanced over and the man had left as well. Haru hadn't noticed the exchange at all as he'd been busy on his phone. "I wish they hadn't left so soon," Haru said. "I would have apologized if they were still there." But Asami knew otherwise. Just then, a loud crash rang out from the kitchen, followed by a low groan. They ran to the kitchen to search for the noise, but nobody was there. Suddenly, Asami screamed and pointed at the wall. "His face!" Asami cried. "The waiter's face!" There was no doubt that the stucco on the wall was shaped like a face, strongly resembling the waiter. Haru brushed it off as a shadow. The restaurant was empty now and feeling very creepy. They started the walk back to the apartment. The streets were eerily quiet. Haru tried to rationalize that everyone was probably at home, but Asami knew that something was off. It was usually busy at that hour. As they stepped off the sidewalk, something snagged Haru's leg. His clothing had become ensnared in a broken street grate. As he tugged, the grating tightened, then lengthened, wrapping around his leg. Haru began to struggle and panic. With Asami's help, they got him free. Haru scrambled to his feet. It looked like a busted grate, but he had seen that something had grabbed him. They broke into a run, but soon stopped in their tracks. What looked like a man was melting into a tree in front of them, his face twisted in horror. One of the branches was shaped exactly like a human arm. Suddenly, it reached out for Asami. The figure within the tree weakly croaked out for help. What they heard was undeniable, but they barely had time to comprehend when more arms swooped out from all around the figure. The tree, the dirt, the sidewalk. They came from everywhere and grabbed up the man, pulling him deeper into the tree. Horrified, the siblings ran. As they reached the end of the block, a humanoid figure rose from the concrete in front of them, slowly turning its head towards them. It advanced. They turned to go in a different direction, but only got a few steps away when the woman from the restaurant emerged from a brick building. Her skin had now also taken on the same pattern as her dress. Pointing at Asami, she said, "Lucky, lucky, lucky." People were rising up from every surface, each one bearing the features of the structure they had risen from. They began to close in. Finally, Haru saw an opening in the crowd. He grabbed his sister and ran through it. Ducking down an alleyway, several arms stretched out from the walls and grabbed them. The ones that had Asami pushed her across to the other side of the alley, while the ones that held Haru pulled him into the structure. Haru reached out for Asami. She tried to help, but the arms reached out and held her back. She noticed something etched into the wall. A name. Kenzie. Haru's closest childhood friend. A young girl who had mysteriously disappeared several years ago. Why was her name there? Haru, stricken by this long-ago name before him again, then began struggling and weeping, repeating the same sentence over and over. "I'm sorry, Kenzie. I'm sorry." Cold over the proof that her brother had had something to do with Kenzie's disappearance all that time ago, Asami looked at him in complete shock. The surface of the wall began to ooze over Haru's skin, covering it. He screamed in horror and pain until he was completely consumed. Asami began to struggle to free herself, sobbing as she realized what Haru had done. But the arms just let her go and began to slowly sink back into their surfaces. On doing so, they all stared at her and continued whispering in unison. "Eventually, he would have killed you too. Lucky, lucky, lucky."